January 20th, 2010. 1:17 p.m. Al Bustan Rotana Hotel, Dubai. Lieutenant Dahi Khalfan Tamim received a call that would consume the next 8 years of his life. "Sir, we have a situation. Room 230. Guest failed to check out. Door locked from inside. Hotel security is requesting police presence." Standard procedure. Hotels call when guests don't check out. Usually it's nothing. Someone overslept. Someone forgot. Someone extended their stay and didn't tell the front desk. Sometimes it's something. Tamim was deputy chairman of Dubai Police. He didn't usually handle hotel room checks, but he was nearby. And something about the tone in the caller's voice suggested this wasn't routine. He arrived at the hotel at 1:34 p.m. By 2:15 p.m., he knew he was looking at a murder. By 2:47 p.m., he suspected it was more than just a murder. By 5:30 p.m., he was certain he was looking at one of the most sophisticated assassinations ever conducted. And over the next 8 years, he would chase the people who did it, through security footage, through forensic evidence, through international databases, through diplomatic channels. He would identify them, photograph them, track them, build cases against them. He would do everything a detective is supposed to do, except catch them, because you can't catch ghosts. And the people who killed Mahmoud al-Mabhouh in room 230 were professionals at being invisible. This is the story of the detective who chased those ghosts. The investigation that revealed everything and solved nothing. The case that was perfectly documented and perfectly unsolvable. This is the story of 8 years hunting people who didn't want to be found, and the frustration of knowing exactly who they were, but being unable to touch them. Tamim pushed open the door to room 230. The first thing he noticed was the temperature. Too cold. The air conditioning was set to maximum. In Dubai, where everyone runs AC, that's normal. But something about it felt deliberate, like someone wanted the room cold. He'd learn later why. Cold slows decomposition, delays discovery, buys time for people to leave the country. But he didn't know that yet. The room looked normal, too normal. Bed neatly made, curtains drawn, no obvious signs of struggle, no blood, no overturned furniture, no broken glass. And in the bed, a man, lying on his back, hands folded across his chest, peaceful, like he was sleeping, except he wasn't sleeping. He was dead. Tamim approached carefully. Years of training. Don't disturb the scene, look first, process, then act. The man appeared to be in his 60s, overweight, gray beard, wearing boxer shorts and an undershirt. Nothing unusual about that. People sleep in underwear. No obvious wounds, no trauma to the head, no marks on the neck, natural causes, heart attack. It happened. Overweight man in his 60s. Stress, travel, heat. But something didn't fit. The position was too perfect, too composed. People who die of heart attacks don't fold their hands across their chests. They clutch their chests. They twist. They struggle. This man looked arranged, positioned, staged. Tamim called for the medical examiner, the forensics team, the photographers. This wasn't a routine death. This needed investigation. While he waited, he looked around the room more carefully. Everything was clean. Not just clean, sterile. The kind of clean that happens when professionals wipe down a crime scene. The bathroom, spotless, towels folded, no water drops on the sink, no toiletries out. The desk, empty, no papers, no laptop, no phone charger. The safe, locked. The man's belongings, minimal, one suitcase, some clothes, a prayer mat. Nothing personal, nothing that told a story about who this man was. It felt wrong. Hotel rooms have personality. People leave traces. This room had been stripped of everything human except the body. Tamim's instincts were screaming, this is not what it looks like. The medical examiner arrived at 2:15 p.m., preliminary examination. Temperature of the body, lividity, rigor mortis. Time of death, approximately 8 to 10 p.m. yesterday. January 19th. So he'd been dead for roughly 16 hours. The hotel only noticed when he failed to check out at noon. Plenty of time for whoever did this to leave. If anyone did this. Maybe it really was natural causes. Any obvious cause of death? The medical examiner shook his head. Nothing obvious. No trauma. No wounds. We'll need a full autopsy. Toxicology. But just from visual examination, could be cardiac arrest, could be something else, could be something else. That phrase would define the next 8 years. Tamim opened the hotel safe using the override code. Inside, a Palestinian Authority passport. Name, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. Age, 61. Occupation, businessman. Also in the safe, credit cards, some cash, hotel receipts, nothing unusual. But when Tamim ran the passport number through international databases, things got interesting. Mahmoud Abdul Rauf wasn't his real name. It was an alias. His real name, Mahmoud al-Mabhouh, senior commander in Hamas, wanted by Israel for the kidnapping and killing of 2 soldiers in 1989, wanted for weapons smuggling, one of Israel's most wanted men, and he'd just died in a Dubai hotel room, peacefully, in his sleep, with no obvious cause of death. Coincidence? Tamim didn't believe in coincidences. At 2:47 p.m., he made a decision. Treat this as a homicide. Full investigation. Pull all security footage. Interview all hotel staff. Process the room completely. Because if Mahmoud al-Mabhouh died of natural causes in Dubai, that was tragic but unremarkable. If he was murdered, that was an international incident, and Tamim had a feeling, a cop's instinct developed over 20 years, that this was murder. Sophisticated murder, professional murder, the kind of murder that intelligence agencies do. The full autopsy took 12 hours. Tamim waited, paced, drank too much coffee, smoked too many cigarettes. He'd quit 6 months ago. This case brought him back. At 3:00 a.m. on January 21st, the medical examiner called him. "You need to see this." Tamim drove to the morgue. Early morning Dubai was quiet. The city never truly sleeps, but at 3:00 a.m. it at least rests. The medical examiner led him to the examination room. The body of Mahmoud al-Mabhouh was on the table, opened, examined, every secret revealed. Cause of death? Asphyxiation? He was suffocated. Tamim felt his pulse quicken. "You're certain?" "Certain. Look at this." The examiner pointed to microscopic hemorrhages in the eyes. Petechial hemorrhaging, classic sign of asphyxiation. The lungs show evidence of oxygen deprivation. The tissue damage is consistent with suffocation. Someone cut off his air supply until he died. How long would that take? With someone resisting? 3 to 5 minutes. But there's something else. Look at this. The examiner showed him the toxicology results. We found traces of succinylcholine in his system. It's a paralytic drug, causes complete muscle paralysis. You can't move, can't fight, can't scream, but you're fully conscious. Tamim felt a chill. So someone paralyzed him first, then suffocated him while he was aware but unable to fight back. Exactly. And succinylcholine metabolizes quickly. Within hours, it's almost undetectable. If we'd waited another day to do the autopsy, we might have missed it. How would someone administer this? Injection. Quick. Probably in the neck or arm. With the right delivery method, the victim would be paralyzed within seconds. Tamim thought through the scenario. Al-Mabhouh returns to his room. Someone is waiting. Or someone follows him in. Quick injection, paralysis, then suffocation. Staged to look like natural causes. Air conditioning turned to maximum to slow decomposition. Professional, clinical, efficient. Is there any way this could have been self-administered? Suicide? The examiner shook his head. No. The injection site is in a location he couldn't have reached himself. And why would someone commit suicide with a paralytic and then suffocate themselves? This was homicide. Sophisticated homicide. How many people would know how to do this? Medically trained personnel, anesthesiologists, combat medics, or intelligence operatives. Yes, or intelligence operatives. Tamim left the morgue as the sun was rising. Dubai was waking up. Another day of business, of tourism, of the carefully curated image of a safe, modern global city. And somewhere in that city, or more likely, already long gone from that city, were the people who had committed one of the most sophisticated murders Tamim had ever seen. He had a murder. He had a method. He had a victim. What he didn't have was suspects. But he would. Within 3 days, he'd have 26 of them. He just wouldn't be able to touch any of them. Tamim assembled a team. His best people, forensics, technical experts, intelligence analysts. I want every second of security footage from this hotel, from the day Al-Mabhouh checked in until the day after his body was discovered. Every camera, every angle, everything. The Bustan Rotana, like most luxury hotels in Dubai, had extensive security cameras, lobby, elevators, hallways, parking garage, entrance, pool, restaurant. The footage was stored digitally, terabytes of it. Tamim's team started reviewing, hour after hour, day after day. Al-Mabhouh had checked in on January 19th at approximately 3:15 p.m. He'd been in Dubai for several days before that, staying at a different hotel. He'd moved to the Bustan Rotana for reasons Tamim would later understand. He had a meeting, someone to see. The footage showed Al-Mabhouh entering the hotel, alone, checking in, going to his room, coming down for dinner, returning to his room, normal guest behavior. But as Tamim's team watched more carefully, they started noticing other people. A man in the lobby, sitting, reading a newspaper, there for hours, watching. A woman at a corner table in the restaurant, alone, ordered coffee, stayed for 3 hours, watching. A couple in the elevator with Al-Mabhouh. They pressed the button for the same floor, but when they exited, they walked in the opposite direction. Then, minutes later, the cameras caught them circling back. Surveillance. Tamim's instincts were right. This wasn't a random murder. This was an operation. Over the next 48 hours, his team identified pattern after pattern. People who appeared multiple times in different locations. People who seemed to be coordinating. People who were always in position to watch Al-Mabhouh. Tamim created a grid. Every person of interest, every sighting, every movement, building a picture. And the picture that emerged was staggering. 26 people, all moving through the hotel on January 19th, all coordinating, all with specific roles. Some were surveillance. They watched Al-Mabhouh, tracked his movements, reported his location. Some were technical support. They handled communications. They coordinated timing. They managed logistics. And at least 4 were the assassination team, the ones who actually entered room 230, the ones who paralyzed and killed Mahmoud Al-Mabhouh. Tamim watched the footage of those 4, over and over. 2 men in tennis outfits, carrying equipment bags. They entered the hotel at 8:24 p.m. on January 19th. They went to the second floor. They entered a room, not Al-Mabhouh's room, and emerged 20 minutes later wearing different clothes, disguises, preparation. At 8:47 p.m., Al-Mabhouh returned to his hotel. The surveillance team tracked him, confirmed he was heading to his room. At 8:52 p.m., the 4 assassins converged. The footage showed them outside room 230. One of them had a cloned key card. Tamim would later determine that a fake room service delivery earlier that day had allowed them to clone Al-Mabhouh's key. They entered. 4 professionals, 1 target. At 9:27 p.m., they exited. Calmly, professionally. They didn't run. They didn't look suspicious. They walked to the elevator, took it to the lobby, left through different exits. By 11 p.m., all 26 people had left Dubai, scattered to different airports, different countries, different continents. A perfectly coordinated operation, executed with military precision. And Tamim had it all on camera. Every face, every movement, every step. He had them, except he didn't. Because knowing who they were and catching them were very different things. Tamim took the security footage to Dubai's facial recognition specialists, ran the images through international databases, Interpol, immigration records, passport files, and one by one, the identities started coming back. Peter Elvidge, British passport. Entered Dubai on January 19th, departed January 20th. Melvin Adam Mildener, British passport. Same pattern, Gail Folliard, Irish passport, female. Part of the surveillance team, Jonathan Lewis Graham, British passport. The list grew, 26 names, 26 passports, British, Irish, French, German, Australian, European citizens, allied nations, friendly countries. Tamim requested additional information from those governments, background checks, verification, cooperation, and that's when things got strange. The British Foreign Office responded first. The passport for Peter Elvidge is genuine, issued by Her Majesty's Passport Office, but the photograph does not match our records. This is not the real Peter Elvidge. The real Peter Elvidge was living in Manchester. He'd never been to Dubai. His identity had been stolen. His passport details had been used, but with a different photograph. Same story for all 26 suspects. Real passports, real passport numbers, but fake photographs, fake people. Someone had access to allied government passport systems. Someone could create genuine documents with false identities. That level of access, that level of sophistication, only a state intelligence agency could do that. And there was only one state intelligence agency that would want Mahmoud al-Mabhouh dead, Mossad. Tamim called a press conference for January 24th, 2010. He'd debated the decision. Going public was risky. It could compromise the investigation. It could create diplomatic problems, but it could also create pressure. It could force cooperation. It could make it harder for the suspects to hide. At 2:00 p.m., Tamim stood before a wall of screens showing the photographs of all 26 suspects. These individuals, he said, are believed to be involved in the assassination of Mahmoud al-Mabhouh in Dubai. They entered the UAE on fraudulent documents. They conducted a state-sponsored assassination on UAE soil. We are requesting international cooperation to identify and apprehend these individuals. The press conference went viral. Within hours, the faces were on every news network in the world. BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, every major outlet. The invisible team was now the most visible people on Earth. Tamim thought that would help, thought the publicity would create pressure, thought someone, somewhere, would provide information. He was wrong. The international response to Tamim's request for cooperation was complicated. Britain expressed outrage at the fraudulent use of British passports, summoned the Israeli ambassador, expelled a Mossad operative working under diplomatic cover, changed passport security protocols. But when Tamim requested extradition of suspects, silence. Ireland, same pattern. Outrage, diplomatic protests, security changes, no extradition. France, quieter response. But still, no cooperation on arrests. Germany, same. Australia, same. The United States declined to comment publicly. Privately conveyed to Dubai that this was a matter between sovereign nations that should be handled through diplomatic channels. Translation, you're on your own. Tamim began to understand the reality. These allied nations were angry about the fake passports, genuinely angry. The violation of their passport systems was serious. But they weren't angry enough to arrest Israeli intelligence operatives who had killed a Hamas commander. The politics were clear. Hamas was designated as a terrorist organization by most Western nations. Al-Mabhouh was responsible for killing Israeli soldiers. He was involved in weapons smuggling. Nobody was going to cry too hard about his death, and nobody was going to damage relations with Israel over it. Tamim was learning a hard lesson. Some cases can't be solved through normal channels. He tried Interpol, issued red notices for all 26 suspects, requested international arrest warrants. The red notices were published. Technically, any of the suspects could be arrested if they crossed international borders, but red notices are only as good as the countries willing to enforce them. And none of the countries where these suspects likely resided, Israel obviously, were going to enforce them. Tamim tracked the suspects as best he could, through intelligence sharing, through informal networks, through contacts in other police forces. One by one, he learned what happened to them. Some disappeared completely, new identities, new lives, gone. Some retired from active service. Careers ended by the exposure, too famous to be useful anymore. A few, just a few, were tracked to Israel, living normal lives, protected by their government. None were arrested, none were charged, none faced justice. Tamim had identified every person involved in the operation. He had photographs, he had movement patterns, he had evidence. He had everything except the one thing that mattered, the ability to arrest them. It was the perfect investigation that led to nothing. The years passed. Tamim continued working. Other cases, other crimes. Dubai never stops. There's always something new. But he never stopped thinking about Room 230, about the 26 ghosts he'd chased, about the perfect crime he'd perfectly documented but couldn't solve. In 2012, he gave an interview to a Western journalist. "Do you think you'll ever catch them?" the journalist asked. Tamim smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "I already caught them. I know who they are. I know what they did. I know how they did it. The world knows. Their faces are public. Their methods are exposed. But they're free. Yes, they're free, because this isn't about catching criminals. This is about power, about politics, about what nations are willing to do to protect their interests. Does that frustrate you?" Tamim was quiet for a moment. Then, "Every day. But I'm a cop. I did my job. I investigated. I found the evidence. I identified the suspects. I built the case. But justice wasn't served." Justice is complicated. Al-Mabhouh killed people. He smuggled weapons. He was involved in terrorism. The people who killed him believed they were serving justice. The people who protect them believe they're serving their national interests. Everyone has their version of justice. What's your version? My version is simple. Murder is murder, even when intelligence agencies do it, even when the victim is a bad person, even when it's politically convenient to look the other way. So you failed? Tamim shook his head. I didn't fail. The system failed. I did everything a detective can do. The system chose not to act on it. That's not failure. That's reality. The journalist pressed. Do you think Mossad learned anything from this? From being exposed? Yes. They learned to be more careful. The operations after Dubai were more discreet. Better operational security. No security cameras. No European passports from friendly nations. They adapted. So nothing changed. Everything changed and nothing changed. They're more careful now, but they're still doing it. Different methods, same results. The cycle continues. Does that bother you? Another pause. Then Tamim said something he'd later regret. If I could, I'd shoot them myself. The quote made headlines. Tamim was reprimanded, had to walk it back, issue clarifications. But he meant it. The frustration of 8 years of chasing ghosts, of knowing everything and being able to do nothing. It built up, created anger, created resentment. Not at Mossad. He actually had a grudging respect for their competence, but at the system, at the politics, at the way justice could be selective based on who you were and who your allies were. In 2015, Tamim was promoted. New responsibilities, more administrative work, less direct investigation. The Dubai case file stayed open, officially unsolved, but everyone knew it was unsolvable. The 26 suspects remained free, some probably still working, some retired, all protected, and Mahmoud al-Mabhouh remained dead, killed in room 230, justice served, depending on your definition of justice. Tamim sometimes wondered about the operatives, what they thought about being exposed, whether they felt pride or shame, whether they told their families what they'd done. He imagined them looking at their photographs on news websites, seeing themselves described as suspects in an international assassination. Did it bother them, or did they see it as proof of their competence? He'd never know, because he'd never talk to them, never interrogate them, never hear their side of the story. Just like they'd never face trial, never face consequences, never face the system Tamim represented. Ghosts don't get caught. They just fade away. By 2018, 8 years after the murder, Tamim rarely thought about the case anymore. Other priorities, other concerns. But occasionally, late at night, he'd open the file, look at the photographs, the 26 faces, Peter Elvidge, Melvin Adam Mildener, Gail Folliard, Jonathan Lewis Graham, all the others. He'd memorized their faces. Could draw them from memory, probably. And he'd think, I know who you are. I know what you did. And you're free. That was the reality. The frustrating, maddening, unchangeable reality. He'd done his job. He'd investigated brilliantly. His team had pieced together one of the most complex operations ever documented, frame by frame, movement by movement, person by person. It was detective work at its finest, forensics at its best, investigation at the highest level, and it meant nothing. Because the system couldn't or wouldn't follow through. That's the lesson Tamim learned from 8 years of chasing ghosts. Sometimes being right doesn't matter. Sometimes having evidence doesn't matter. Sometimes even knowing exactly who committed the crime doesn't matter. Because justice isn't automatic. It's not inevitable. It's not even consistent. Justice depends on power, on politics, on who you know and who protects you. Mossad had power, had political protection, had allies who would look the other way. And Tamim? He had evidence. He had truth. He had the law on his side, but evidence without enforcement is just paperwork. Truth without power is just words. Law without application is just theory. So the case stayed open. The suspects stayed free. The crime stayed documented but unpunished. And Tamim? He moved on. Because that's what professionals do. You work the case. You do your best. And then you accept the outcome, even when the outcome is unsatisfying. But he never forgot. Never stopped knowing that somewhere out there, 26 people were living normal lives after committing a murder he'd perfectly documented. That knowledge stayed with him. A small, constant frustration. A reminder that the world doesn't always work the way it should. Sometimes the ghosts win. Sometimes the detective loses. Sometimes the perfect investigation leads nowhere. That's not how stories are supposed to end. That's not satisfying. That's not justice. But it's real. And Dahi Khalfan Tamim, the detective who chased ghosts for 8 years, learned to live with that reality, even if he never learned to like it. This is the story they don't tell you about intelligence operations. Everyone focuses on the operatives, the planning, the execution, the brilliant tactics. Nobody talks about the detective left holding an unsolvable case. Nobody talks about the forensic evidence that leads nowhere. Nobody talks about the photographs of suspects who'll never be arrested. Nobody talks about the frustration of doing everything right and achieving nothing. But that's part of the story too, the invisible part. The part that doesn't make headlines. The part where the system fails, where politics trumps justice, where power protects its own. Dahi Khalfan Tamim spent 8 years chasing the people who killed Mahmoud al-Mabhouh in Dubai. He identified them. He documented their every move. He built a case that would hold up in any court. And none of it mattered. Because you can't arrest ghosts. You can't prosecute shadows. You can't jail people that governments choose to protect. All you can do is know the truth, document it, make it public, and hope that someday, somehow, it means something. But 8 years later for Tamim, it still didn't. The case file sits in Dubai police archives, perfectly documented, perfectly unsolved. A testament to brilliant detective work, and to the limits of that work when politics intervene. Every operation has more than one story. Most channels tell you about the brilliant execution. We tell you about the detective who documented everything and arrested no one, about the investigation that revealed everything and solved nothing, about the 8 years spent chasing people you can see but never touch. Subscribe for the perspectives they don't show, because truth isn't always enough. Evidence isn't always enough. Being right isn't always enough. Sometimes the ghosts win, and the detective just has to live with it.